The Life Talk Show is about testimonies where you can listen to be inspired, encouraged, uplifted, and entertained. It's the life. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is Ashley Cotton. I'm the host for the Life Talk Show. And as always, I always have a new guest to speak about their story, their testimony. And so I'm going to do a brief introduction as far as who George Brooks is. But for those who are new to the Life Talk Show, this show is simply about testimony. And so I always get the question asked, what are you going to be talking about this week? And it's simply about a testimony. Now, that testimony can be anything about a business, personal, whatever it is that guest wants to share to give God the glory based on Revelation 12:11, then they can do so. But just know that the foundation of this here is telling our stories, being transparent, being honest, and being open. And so I hope that you all can gain something from this, that everyone has a testimony. Even you who are watching have a testimony. And so this is Holy Spirit led. I think it's very important to know up front what you're getting and, what's the source behind it. Everything that I do, that I try to do is Holy Spirit led. Do I always get it right? No, but I do it from a pure heart, from a sincere heart. And so just, beyond any question or anything, just so you can have peace of mind. Because we know that the enemy will try to disguise himself as light. And one thing that I don't like and that I actually experienced was, being deceived, thinking something was real, something was true, and it was not. So therefore, just to clear the air, I'm going to go ahead and read Mr. George's bio. Around the age of 9, George noticed that he didn't process thoughts and ideas the same way that his peers did. George was labeled as overly emotional. He knew that mental illness was a thing, even at that young age. However, the level of ignorance and unawareness, especially in the Black community, made things markedly more difficult throughout his formative years. George's worst was 2 years ago. He was in the wrong place and surrounded by the wrong people. He was literally dying and washing away, but thankfully, members of his family and loved ones were able to help him in recovery. George knew he had to clean up his mental and emotional diet. Gone were the days of watching the news and morbid shows and associating with the wrong crowd. He now found out about the world by venturing out into it. He also relocated from Memphis to Dallas, which is arguably the greatest thing he has ever done for himself. George had to overcome self-doubt, disloyalty, being obsessed with his condition, and the fear of making that one huge step toward healing and recovery. George continues to pursue his goals and establish positive, beneficial relationships with those from his past. So let's welcome George Brooks. Thank you for coming on to the Life Talk Show this morning.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So one of the things that I want you to highlight, of course, we're going to get into your testimony, but to start this show off right and correctly with scripture, one of the biggest things I know with mental illness is that we have labeled torment, demonic influence, and all of those things, right? Because according to Ephesians 6:12-13, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand, right?
Right.
So that is the scripture that we know, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. But now it seems like mental illness, the label of it has taken front and center, which is absolutely fine if that's something that you want to define it as. But for you, George, I really want you to break down between the label of mental illness and really saying what it is: demonic torment from the principalities.
Well, that now I'll say this. That's going to be an interesting. There's several ways to look at it. I'll give my personal how it manifested in me, and then we can speak on that because that's going to be kind of a tricky issue, which is good. We're going to talk about it now. In my instance, it was actually having a lot to do with spirituality. It was in conjunction. It was the mental aspect and the spiritual aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So in all fairness, I can't necessarily speak upon it being a purely spiritual manifestation and not have a mental health component because I have never really just seen that. So to be 100%, honest about it, I can't speak on that. So I've never seen it. I've never experienced it per se, but I'm sure it occurs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it should be explored in the sense of that being its own phenomenon, but that's something that has to be explored in a different way. I think so, because the treatment for that would be different. How would you address that issue?
Mm-hmm.
If it were purely a spiritual phenomenon, let's say it was an issue with a dynamic manifestation, how would you treat? I mean, how would one treat that?
Mm-hmm. With deliverance.
With deliverance.
With healing. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people, they're not spiritually equipped to deal with something like that. Like I know, you heard of deliverance services and you see people, going through their thing to be delivered. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people can't handle that. And I want to put things in perspective so people can walk away with some kind of knowledge spiritually and some tools to say, okay, I've been calling it this for so long, not to take away from it, but this is what I've been calling for so long. But maybe I need to look a little deeper into probably my bloodline, into seeking the Father, right? To say, okay, Lord, what is this? What am I going through? Why is this happening? I feel like I'm always in my mind and I can't escape and I'm depressed and all of these things. And, the spiritual realm is real, just like this earthly realm. And so I just want people, I just want people to understand and be able to differentiate and really get to the root of it all. If that makes sense.
Exactly. And what I'm trying to lead to is to this. That's true. There's a spiritual realm. But what I'm worried about when it comes to, especially with, and I'm not saying this is the case, and I'm not saying that this is what you're alluding to, but when it comes to a lot of times in the Black community and mental health, and what we have, whether you want to, religion and spirituality, and we have the clinical side of mental health, they often clash. Mm-hmm. And what I want us to make sure that what we can do is that we can first of all make sure that there's a way for those two entities to coexist to heal the whole person.
Right.
Let's make sure that we get that done first.
Right.
Because without that, it's not, because to me, in my instance, it wasn't just a matter of just the clinical and just the spiritual. It was them both, but for a long time they clashed so vehemently that it wasn't doing anything but killing me. So in my eyes, that takes priority as far as helping to heal my people, because that's what I've seen hurt us probably more immediately than anything. Mm-hmm. So like I said, I totally validate the spiritual side. Don't think I'm not. I totally validate that. But we got to, I think the precipice should be right now. We know this exists. We know this exists. But how do we have it to where we can have those discussions together? Because right now it's not happening.
Right, George.
There's some churches that are being more progressive, especially in terms of medication, but there's far too many that are not. and all it's doing is keeping my people sick.
Okay, so let's start with you, George. Like, how did all this come about? And I want you to talk about it from the beginning all the way to the end and where you are now with it, because clearly you seem to be in a good headspace. You seem to be whole. So what were the stepping stones from the beginning to get you to where you are?
Okay. And the reason I feel so strongly about it is because God is putting this on about, because it started when I was young and when I did start to show symptoms of some mental wellness issues. And of course, there were other environmental things as we all have had growing up. What I was told was always to pray the issue away, or especially in school, I was always told I'm not going to church enough. And I did go to church. And did it help? No, not at the time, because I was not at that point where God was ready to introduce himself to me. I wasn't at the point where I could make that conscious decision to truly accept God into my life. Now that's a separate thing. But when I did begin the medicinal part of my treatment as an adult, it helped a little bit, but there was something missing. And at that point, that's when my relationship with God started. That's when everything started to click. But I found in a lot of that journey that I had to make, and a lot of reason why I moved to, was that those two entities clashed all the time. And I would see it just in conversations with people when you would talk about mental illness. A lot of times with my community, it was always such a stigma. And one thing I always felt was that the Black church has a special place in our community, and we all know that. But to advocate for things that would actually be considered harmful to some people is not helpful. And that is part of my testimony, because with that experience, I've learned, and I endeavor upon, and God wants me to try to help bridge that gap between our spiritual side and our more clinical side to make us a whole person, to make us well.
So, George, why do you think that there's such a clash between the two? Because after all, God did create science, and there's nothing wrong with science. There's nothing wrong with counseling and all of these different things. But why is it when it comes to God and the spiritual things, it's totally dismissed? Like, no, we don't need all of that. We don't need that over there. This is what we need right here.
It's generational. Mistrust of authority, mistrust of a lot of mistrust of government in the system, basically. I mean, it's not like we don't have justification. You can, look at Tuskegee and see that. A lot of it, but the main part of it is ignorance. Ignorance is not a bad word. Ignorance is not a bad term to me. Like I tell my kids, ignorance is opportunity. Ignorance is a chance for you to learn something you didn't know. Now, if you choose to say ignorance, to me, that's a sin, but it's an opportunity. So what I want to do with Meta Association is go out into the community and speak about not only my testimony, not only what I see and what I've learned, but ways I've learned to cope, not as a way of saying, well, my way is this, my way is that, but as a way to inspire people to find their own unique ways to cope. And that's what I feel that God wants me to do. I think that's why he's put me in certain positions. I've been blessed. I've met some amazing people here in Dallas. I've met some people that have really blessed me, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that. So it's my life purpose to try to help people, and that comes in so many different ways. But I want to see a stronger link between us spiritually, and to me that means whether you're Christian, Hindu, Muslim, I don't care. I think there's something lacking spiritually in humanity nowadays, and until we get that back, there's going to be something missing. And especially when you speak in terms of someone dealing with a chronic illness or chronic disease, such as mental illness or cancer or diabetes or something like that. This is something I think will also go to improve to how we treat each other. We've lost our way in terms of how we treat our fellow man, and we really have to get that back on track. But it's going to be an incremental process, and it's going to take time. And maybe through my work at Meta and what I do, I can contribute in my own infinitesimal way.
George, how bad was your mental health?
Oh, mine was bad. I let it. I didn't maintain, and that's my responsibility. I didn't maintain my health like I should for a long time, and then life circumstances happened. Both my parents passed. Went through some, rough time in my marriage, economic things, health things. So it really deteriorated, and it was to the point where I was pretty much non-functioning for several years, and until the point to where I pretty much hit what was rock bottom for me. And I had a friend that connected to me, and one of the first things we talked about was my relationship with God. And I found that what I was doing that was hurting me was that I was looking to define my relationship with God through other people and how they reacted. I wasn't looking for how I felt or for what I was getting from my father. I was looking for validation for other people. Oh, isn't he a good person? Because I was doing that wrong. And I did that wrong for a long time. And in fact, my mother used to tell me when I was coming up, she's like, it's like you running from it. And she's like, one day it'll catch you. And God didn't have to catch me. I was always in his hand, but I was at that point where everything clicked. That's all I can say. And I would hear about people having that moment, it was like an epiphany, and I never believed them. I was so cynical, but when I had that moment, it was real.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a beautiful thing for me. And that's really when my life changed. And that's really when the motivation and idea and drive for Meta came to me. And that's what's been driving me ever since.
Mm-hmm. So your pain is what your ministry is, because you have to walk through it. And sometimes we don't understand it. We're don't lean to your own understanding, but acknowledge God in all of your ways, and he'll make your pathway straight. And so the fact that you have to walk through this, because how can you minister to people and how can you help them if you've never gone through it yourself? My calling, or what I'm discovering now, is deliverance ministry, healing, deliverance, because I once had to be delivered and set free from traps and things of the enemy. And so how am I able to heal and deliver others when I haven't gone through that myself? I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm dealing with. And so for you, when it clicked for you, what did God say? If there was anything that was said, like, how did that come about? Like, I'm pretty sure he revealed some things to you. I'm pretty sure he showed you some things, right?
Well, for years before that happened, people had always said I would make a good mental health advocate. I wasn't at the point where I could advocate for myself, let alone anyone else. But I always kind of sat on that idea as far as something I would want to do. And while I was going through my divorce, I was kind of just sitting on the couch, kind of figure out, okay, now since I decided to live, since I kind of fought my way back from the health problems, mental illness, addiction, all that, it was like it was a compulsion to go and start researching mental health advocacy. It was like I can't describe it. It was like a lightning flash, and it was like, go do this. This is what it's meant for you to do.
Mm-hmm.
I put you through this. I walk with you through that pain for you to do this. So now when you sit across to someone that needs help, you can look at them, George, and you can tell. When they say that no one understands, now you can be that person that can say to them, I understand. And that's what's really important to me. And so I look at all that pain I went through and stress. It was growth. It's a blessing. Those scars are blessings to me. So, and that's what I try to use them as.
And how can people find you? You're the CEO of Meta Association. So, for people who may know someone that's dealing with mental health issues and them themselves are dealing with mental health issues, how can they get your help?
The best way for them to reach us is to visit our site, metaassociation.org. That's METTA association.org. We just updated it just this morning. One thing I do want to mention, North Texas Giving Day is coming up. Many 501c3s and nonprofits are dependent on that, rely on that heavily for their funding. So I want to urge people to support the nonprofit of your choice for North Texas Giving Day, September 23rd. If you support Meta, I'd appreciate it, but please try to support some of us if you can. But Meta Association, I can't talk. MetaAssociation.org. I have not had coffee. That's the best way to get in touch with us. We have all of our information, all links to our social media on our site, all contact numbers. We even have a chat app that you can use to get in touch with us also. So if you know someone that needs help or just has questions, or if you need referrals for other services, you can reach us there.
And what are the signs for mental illness? Like, what are the things that you look for to see?
It really depends upon the illness, and they're so varied. But I would speak to someone if I notice any just drastic or subtle, prolonged change in behavior. To me, that's something we should go for a mental health checkup yearly, just like we do a physical. Just go talk to someone once a year. Communication is important. Have someone you can talk to about when things are bothering you, and don't just talk when things are bad. Talk when things are good. Make sure you have a sounding board. Make sure you have things that you can do that you enjoy as a release for stress, and that's part of your self-care, which is important also.
And were you prescribed any medications for your mental health? I mean, what were the necessary tools and exercises that you had to do to pull yourself out of yourself?
Well, it took about 10 years to find the right cocktail of medications that really, really worked. So a lot of my treatment plan now, it was trial and error, but what worked for me is a couple prescriptions, just your regular antidepressant, mood stabilizer. My talk therapist, I've met a wonderful therapist in Dallas, Sekou Fraser, changed my life. When I started the talk therapy with him, it's like the skies opened, because it helped me see things about myself and helped me see things about how I was relating to other people. And not only did it help me from a mental health standpoint in terms of my condition, it helped me in terms of just dealing with people. I noticed the way I dealt with the cashier at Kroger was different. I put more thought into that. So that was greatly beneficial. Also, spend family time, spend time with your loved ones, and just because it's blood doesn't make it family. So, but find you people that, even if it's just one or two people that you can confide in, when times are bad or good, and take care of your spirituality. Don't, try to take that time to talk to God every day. I take that time every day. I go outside and I just sit, and that's my moment to acknowledge God. That's my moment. I always acknowledge him, but that's my moment to sit and have that peace and have that moment to collect myself spiritually, and my days go better.
And George, you mentioned in your bio that this started with you at a very young age, right? And I'm pretty sure you couldn't articulate what was going on with you at a young age. You just knew that something was off, like you were, different or whatever. So for young children who can't articulate, like, hey, I'm having a mental breakdown or something, what are the signs that you look for in your children? I know, like, behavior patterns and so on and so forth, but for you and also for parents that may have children that are struggling in this area, what are some of the telltale signs?
Well, I have custody of my 16-year-old son who's bipolar. So as far as being a parent raising a child with a mental wellness issue, you will notice pretty early on, because the sign, there'll be certain behaviors that won't be what they categorize as normal.
Mm-hmm.
That's just going to be part of their development if they really do have an issue that they're dealing with. Excuse me. The only thing is you can't be in denial when you see those signs. That doesn't mean automatically that they'll have to be on medication. But if you see a child with a temperature, you take them to the doctor. If you see something behaviorally, that concerns you, or mentally that concerns you, take them to the doctor. And that's the one thing that we're so afraid to do, because we're afraid of what we'll hear. But the thing is, unless you hear it, you can't address it. And there, so much of raising a child with a mental illness is that what you do from the onset of it to the point that they reach 21, it literally affects the rest of their life. Because oftentimes those young adults that were raised, as children with mental illness, they oftentimes have arrested development. And that's another concept I want to teach to people in our community, because that's something that never gets discussed, because we never addressed it. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know what it's called. We don't understand it. So I really want to stress communication and understanding, as far as how we discuss mental illness. And I just found that that's the only way you can ever heal. Nothing in my life ever got better till I started having a dialogue about it. Nothing.
So. And do you think there's a lot more tools available now, like as far as the educational aspect, than it was, back from the past?
See, Black mental health is it's a sexy topic right now because it's in the news. But I mean, what's going to happen in 2 years when it's not? So that's what I'm trying to get ready for, because it's a buzzword to me, the way it's being treated. I mean, they're throwing grant money in it, but that won't last long. So it seems like nobody's really saying anything. Nobody's having the kind of discussions that I feel, especially me being a Black male and raising Black males, no one's having those kinds of discussions. Now, there are plenty of Black men out here that are capable of having those discussions, but we just have to get organized. And, and what I say may offend some people, but some of what has to be said has to come from us. We have to learn to teach our own community again. But we can't teach ourselves unless we have the knowledge. And that's one of the things I want to try to work toward.
That's good. I didn't think about that. That it's a buzzword and it's popular now, but what happens along the line when, and I don't want to say it's a phase, right? Because trends come and go, but hopefully this is not a trend. This is something that's serious, should be around for some ages now until it becomes rectified. And so, hey, Mr. TMI, he said, hey, Ashley Cotton, hey, thank you for tuning in and watching. So George, what else do you want to talk about? Like, as far as the mental aspect, like what are some things that we don't know that is coming to surface?
I think one thing that, when I say it's a trend, there's a lot of good coming out of it as far as data now. We're seeing it's more common in our community than what we ever probably thought. We're saying that it's a lot closer to home. But I still see the issues of what it leads to. There were people that I was around that had, and it's not necessarily always a chronic mental health issue. Sometimes it's a situational one. Sometimes it may be a seasonal one, but they still exist. And it leads to a lot of times to substance abuse. It leads to incarceration. We also deal a lot with reentry, helping these men and women that are, for whatever reason, incarcerated, but they paid their debts to society, as cliched as it sounds, and they need help. They need access to housing. They need access to mental health care. They need access to training. They need someone to let them know that they are are valued and can contribute to society. Otherwise, we just have them going back to jail again.
Yeah.
You know?
A repeated cycle. You mentioned that your son is bipolar. So my
Yes.
next question or the connection would be, is this a generational thing or is this just happenstance?
Well, they have found that it's often genetic. So I can see that if I look back, you know, I'm sure we all can if we look look hard enough, but there are genetic components to it, and especially stacked with environmental factors, possible stimuli that may cause it. It would be more prevalent depending on the situation.
That's interesting. Okay, well, George Brooks, I'm going to hit you with the hot track with my fire rapid questions.
Yes,
They're just, quick questions just to, I guess, icebreakers, if you want to call it that. But the first one is, what is your favorite verse in the Bible?
oh, my favorite book of the Bible is Job, but I don't remember any verses. I'm not a Bible scholar, but Job is my favorite book in the Bible, hands down.
Okay. Number 2, how do you get into the presence of the Lord?
I'm always in the presence of the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Number 3, what do you think heaven will be like?
I can't conceive of it. Of course, I can think of all the TV images of everybody with halos and harps, but really, as a man and as a Christian, I don't know. I can't conceive of it.
I'm sorry, my allergies are really off the chain.
I feel so bad for you.
I know my allergy. I don't want people to think I got corona because
no, everybody gonna yell corona.
Listen, you can't sneeze, you can't cough, you can't do nothing with corona.
Can't breathe too hard, really.
I'm just like, listen, people, head colds and allergies do exist. They do exist. So I'm just giving a disclaimer that I got allergies. Okay, guys, I'm not contagious. All right. Number 4, who would you like to meet in heaven? It could be from the Old Testament or New Testament.
Job.
Mm-hmm.
Job. Yeah,
and number 5, given the opportunity where you're in a quiet, intimate setting and God manifests himself to you face to face, what would that conversation be like?
I don't think I'd be able to speak, but I don't know. I can't say. I don't think if one were ever truly in the presence of, well, you know what I mean, had a visual representation, it would be of such that we would be able to really process it.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's just that powerful. We wouldn't.
Any last thoughts? Anything that God's placed on your heart that you want to share with your audience?
I want to thank everyone because I met some truly great people here in Dallas, and I try to treat everybody I meet with respect, and I've gotten that in return from people that I've met here, and let everybody know I'm very grateful. And let's just try to make sure we treat people the way we want to be treated. No, in fact, let's treat them better than sometimes we feel we should be treated, because we never know what that person may be going through.
Absolutely. I want to tell my audience too, for those who are watching this, I want to say thank you so much for, joining us this morning. And this is such a hot topic right now of being, mental illness. And I don't want it to be a cliche. I do not want this to be overlooked. There is help out here for us, especially within the African American community. But there is help for us. And I want you all to go visit George Brooks' website, because he's the founder and the CEO of Meta Association. And so if you all know someone that's silently suffering, let's just take a moment to spiritually discern where they are and to give them the help that they need, instead of calling them crazy or, that's just so-and-so, that's just how they are. No, let's step outside of ourselves to really give our brother, our sister, our undivided attention, and to just really, really, seek to help them and to be patient with them, and to really just stand in the gap, because we all have dealt with something, and maybe it may not be exactly the same or the severity of it, but we've all been in that place where we've been stuck, depressed, just a little helpless at times. And so let's just really just take the moment to give a helping hand if we can. And so I want to thank you so much, George Brooks, for coming
Thank you.
on and sharing your story with us. And tell them your website one more time.
It's mettaassociation.org. That's METTA association.org.
Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Please share this, and I will see you guys Saturday. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.